Right. So you want to do a deep dive on Neville Goddard and how to use dreams to make things happen.
Right.
So we're cracking open his 1963 lecture, Incubate the Dream.
Oh, yeah.
And trust me, this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Goddard was talking about imagination way before it was like a mainstream idea.
Yeah.
And the way he blends it with spirituality
Yeah.
is just mind-blowing.
Yeah. What's so fascinating is how he uses these ancient stories and wisdom to, like, illustrate these concepts. Like, for example, he starts by distinguishing between, like, the regular dreams we all have and intentional dreams, the kind we can cultivate to shape our reality.
Intentional dreaming. Okay, I'm intrigued, but how do you even begin to control your dreams like that?
So he points to the biblical story of Solomon in 1 Kings 3 and 2 Chronicles 1.
Okay.
Solomon intentionally induces a dream to seek guidance from God. But here's the key. Solomon doesn't ask for wealth or power. He asks for an understanding mind to rule his people justly, essentially aligning with God's promise to his father David.
So he's using his dream to tap into a higher purpose, not just personal gain.
Right.
But how does that translate to us regular folks who aren't ruling entire nations?
Right. So that's where Goddard's interpretation gets really interesting.
Okay.
He says it's not about like a literal sun or kingdom, but about states of consciousness. David represents humanity.
Okay.
And Solomon's request symbolizes the desire for spiritual awakening within us all.
Okay, I'm starting to see the deeper layers here. So it's not just about getting what we want, but about aligning with a greater purpose.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, the idea of controlling my dreams still feels a bit out there. Is there any proof this actually works?
Well, Goddard brings up another biblical story.
Okay.
Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dream. A double dream, he says, signifies that God has set things in motion. And guess what? Goddard himself had a double dream experience.
Wow.
He describes becoming grandfather, a figure who manifests desires through vivid imagination.
Hold on, he actually became this grandfather figure.
Exactly.
Not just dreamed about him.
Initially, he hears about grandfather.
Right.
But then he embodies the figure experiencing the desired state firsthand.
Okay.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
It's about stepping into the desired reality.
Right.
Not just observing it from afar.
Okay. That's pretty wild. But how does this translate into a technique we can actually use?
Right.
I'm dying to know how this all works.
So Goddard calls it incubating the dream.
Okay.
He says we all have a vacant lot, which represents something we desire that's currently missing in our lives.
So the first step is identifying that vacant lot, that thing we're missing.
Yes.
What's next?
This is where it gets really exciting.
Okay.
You have to step into the end state.
Okay.
Fully embody it as if it's already real.
Okay.
Imagine it in vivid detail, what you see, hear, feel.
Right.
Even how others react. Wow, you're essentially living the desired experience in your imagination.
So we're not just wishing for something, we're creating a detailed mental picture of it as if it's already happening.
Exactly.
That's a powerful concept.
You're planting a seed in your imagination. And according to Goddard, that seed must flower.
Wow.
This is where his understanding of both ancient wisdom and the power of the mind really shines through.
Okay, I'm starting to get the gist of it. Identify the vacant lot.
Yes.
Step into the end state.
Yes.
And live it in your imagination.
Yes.
But then Goddard throws in this unexpected element, the symbolism of the pig.
And this is where it gets a little tricky.
Okay.
He connects the pig to Christ the Savior.
What?
But don't worry, we're not talking about literal pigs here.
Yeah.
It's a universal symbol.
So what does this pig symbolize, and how does it relate to intentional dreaming?
So Goddard shares a dream where a pig transforms from small and hungry to large but rangy. He interprets this as neglecting to feed Christ, which in this context represents neglecting our imagination.
Interesting. So is he saying that by not using our imagination for good, we're essentially starving a part of ourselves?
Precisely. And it's not just about neglecting our own potential. It's about failing to use this power for something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
Every act of using our imagination in a positive way is like feeding our inner Christ.
So it's not just about manifesting a new car or a bigger house.
Right.
It's about using our imagination to contribute to a more loving and harmonious world.
Exactly. And this aligns perfectly with Goddard's ultimate message.
Okay.
While the technique can work for anything, he emphasizes that our ultimate vacant lot should be the fulfillment of God's promise.
Okay.
Which is ultimately spiritual awakening.
Okay, so we're talking about some pretty profound stuff here.
Yes.
But I have to admit, I'm still struggling to understand how this pig symbolism translates into practical action.
Yeah.
How can we actually feed our inner Christ through imagination?
That's a great question. And it leads us to one of the most fascinating aspects of Goddard's teaching. You see, he doesn't just tell us what to do.
Right.
He provides us with a framework for understanding.
Yeah.
He provides us with a framework for understanding how to actually apply this concept in our lives.
Okay, so we're talking about feeding our inner Christ.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to know how Goddard explains this whole framework thing.
Well, he uses a really interesting analogy to illustrate it.
Okay.
The idea of becoming our own father's father.
Okay.
It sounds a bit complicated at first, but it actually makes a lot of sense when you break it down.
Becoming our own father's father?
Yeah.
That sounds like something out of a time travel movie. How does that even work?
Remember how Goddard said that David represents humanity? When we reach a state of spiritual maturity, he suggests, we become the father of that humanity.
Okay.
We become the source of our own spiritual understanding,
Right.
rather than just inheriting it from someone else.
So it's like graduating from spiritual childhood to spiritual adulthood.
Exactly.
We're no longer relying on someone else to define our beliefs.
Right.
We're creating them ourselves.
Exactly. And that's where the idea of feeding our inner Christ comes in.
Okay.
Every time we make a conscious choice to align with love, to act from a place of compassion,
Right.
to create something beautiful in the world, we're nurturing that spiritual maturity within ourselves. We're feeding that inner source of wisdom and understanding.
That's a powerful image. But let's bring this back down to earth for a moment.
Okay.
Goddard doesn't just talk in abstract terms. He also shares some pretty amazing stories about how he used this technique in his own life.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
One of the most compelling stories is how he used intentional dreaming to get an honorable discharge from the Army.
He dreamt his way out of the Army?
He was stationed far from home.
Oh, wow.
And desperately wanted to be back in his own apartment.
So he literally dreamt his way out of the Army.
Yeah.
That sounds too good to be true.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how he did it.
He followed the technique to the letter. He vividly imagined himself lying in his own bed, smelling the familiar sense of home, seeing the details he would only see if he were actually there.
Okay.
He immersed himself in that reality every night before falling asleep.
And it worked. He actually got discharged just from vividly imagining it.
It took 9 days. But yes.
Wow.
His application, which had been initially denied, was suddenly approved.
Okay.
It's a pretty convincing example of the power of this technique.
Okay, I have to admit that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But didn't he also caution against using this technique to escape our responsibilities?
You're absolutely right.
We shouldn't be dreaming our way out of paying taxes or going to work.
Goddard emphasizes that this power shouldn't be used to shirk our responsibilities. In fact, he mentions that his commanding officer likely believed he was the one who initiated the discharge. Goddard didn't try to correct him or take credit for it.
So it's not about manipulating the world to get what we want, but about working in harmony with it. We plant the seed and then trust that it will grow in its own time and in its own way.
Exactly. That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
It's about surrendering control, allowing the universe to orchestrate the details.
Right.
He compares it to a farmer planting a seed.
Okay.
The farmer doesn't dig up the seed every day to check on its progress.
Right.
He trusts the natural process of growth.
I love that analogy. It reminds me of this saying, let go and let God.
Right.
But letting go can be so hard, especially when we really want something.
It is.
Yeah.
But Goddard reminds us that the more we try to force things, the more we hinder the process.
Right.
It's about finding that balance between focused intention and surrendered trust.
This is all starting to make sense, but I'm wondering about the potential pitfalls. Are there any downsides or challenges we should be aware of when using this technique?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And Goddard does address some of the challenges. He talks about the importance of being mindful of our thoughts and feelings because our thoughts and feelings, because they're the very seeds that we're planting.
Right.
If we constantly focus on lack or fear or doubt, that's what we're going to manifest in our lives.
It's like that saying, energy flows where attention goes. We have to be mindful of the direction we're pointing our imaginative energy.
Exactly.
If we're obsessing over what we don't want, we're essentially inviting it in.
Right. And this is where Goddard's emphasis on the pig symbolism becomes really relevant.
Yeah.
Remember, the underfed rangy pig represented a neglect of using imagination lovingly.
Yeah. I'm starting to see how that ties in. It's not just about getting what we want.
Right.
It's about using our imagination to create something good, something that contributes to a more harmonious and loving world.
Precisely. It's about aligning with a greater good, using this incredible power to uplift ourselves and others.
Right.
It's about feeding our inner Christ, as Goddard puts it, by making choices that reflect our highest values.
So every time we choose kindness over judgment, every time we visualize a more peaceful world, every time we use our imagination to create beauty,
yes,
we're not just impacting our own lives,
yes,
we're contributing to the collective awakening of humanity.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it reminds me of something Goddard said in this lecture that really struck me.
Okay.
He said, everything is a play, and God is playing all the parts.
Wow, that's deep. It's like we're all actors in this grand cosmic drama.
Right.
But we also have the power to choose our roles.
Yes.
To write our own scripts through the choices we make and the realities we imagine.
And the more we awaken to our true nature, the more we realize that we're not just actors in this play, we're co-creators with the divine.
Wow.
We have a role to play in shaping the reality we experience,
right,
both individually and collectively.
This has been such an incredible deep dive.
It has.
We've gone from understanding the different types of dreams to exploring biblical stories, to uncovering the symbolism of pigs. It's amazing how Goddard manages to weave together ancient wisdom and modern psychological concepts.
It really is. We've learned that we can incubate our dreams, manifest our desires, and ultimately fulfill God's promise within ourselves by embracing the power of our imagination.
We've also learned that this power comes with great responsibility.
Yes.
It's not just about getting what we want, but about using our imagination for good, for creating a world that reflects our highest values.
And that brings us to the ultimate question, the one I hope you'll continue to contemplate long after this deep dive.
Okay.
If every act of imagination is a seed, what seeds are we planting in the world? What legacy are we creating through our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions?
That's a powerful question to leave us with. It's a reminder that we have a choice in every moment. We can choose to plant seeds of fear and doubt, or we can choose to plant seeds of love, hope, and possibility. And those seeds, as Goddard reminds us, will inevitably bear fruit. So choose wisely and happy planting.